Across war-torn skies and quiet hospital rooms, countless souls told the same story. A humble friar who appeared at the exact moment they needed him, though he never left his monastery quarters. Tonight we explore the life of Padre Pio, a man whose prayers seemed to travel farther than his footsteps, and whose presence touched the souls of all he encountered.
The devil is like a rabid dog tied to a chain. The demon has only one door by which to enter into our soul. There are no secret doors.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Common Anomaly podcast. Joining me today is Clayton James. How's it going, brother?
I'm doing all right today.
Yeah, I'm doing good too. I'm really tired. I'm extremely tired. It was a very busy week. How about you?
You know what? I'm doing okay. I'm kind of sore.
Sore?
Yeah, I was playing my my Batman VR game the other night.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I
beating up some poor people.
I pulled a muscle, like beating up bad guys.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm old and clearly not Batman.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, you're not Batman.
So yeah, that game makes you work for it.
Yeah, it does. It does. I never finished that game. I got to get back around to that. There's a number of titles I need to get back. Ever since we got the dog, I've got no time for that. It's like I'm lucky if I can get my workouts in, and then there's like next to no time for anything else.
Yeah.
I do got a cool shout out before we get started today. I'm really excited for this episode. We were really kind of searching and struggling to find a topic, and I ended up just kind of slinging mud against the wall, kind of tossing different ideas your way. And this is what stuck, was Padre Pio. And I'm really glad we're doing it. I had quite a good time learning about his life this week.
Me too. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a fan of this dude. I'm really looking forward to telling his story. But earlier this week, I was at work. One of the functions of my day job is I train for my organization people in lift equipment, like forklifts and stackers and that sort of thing. So I was at one of our other locations training some people on a stacker, on a powered stacker. And I'd run a couple students through the course, and I was doing the practical, the hands-on evaluation of the piece of equipment with this guy. And I finished, and everything went fine. He passed with flying colors. I shook his hands, and congratulations, here's your license. And he said, I'm a really big fan of your podcast, by the way. And I was like, what? Oh my God, right? I've been waiting for this to happen, for someone just to catch me unawares and say, hey, I'm a fan of your show. And it finally happened, and I guess him and he got his mom listening to the show as well, and they both really enjoy it. So shout out today is to Marcos and his mother. Thanks for being on board. Really appreciate the support.
Very cool.
Yeah, that made my day. Yeah. All right, so Padre Pio, let's get into it.
Okay, where do you want to start?
Well, let's just start with the basics, right? So Padre Pio, he's a Franciscan monk. Pardon me, friar.
Yes, there's
friar.
A difference.
Yes, and I found this interesting. So do you want to describe the difference between monks and friars?
Okay, so monks and friars get confused quite a bit. And they both live very Spartan lifestyles, devoted entirely to their religion.
They take the vows of poverty and yada yada.
So monks live very introspective lives. They basically just pray all day. Pray and read.
Yeah.
It's a life devoted to introspection. Friars, on the other hand, are more outwardly focused.
Yeah.
They're out there in the community doing charitable work, giving spiritual advice, raising money to help the poor, things like that.
Yeah, monks stay kind of housed within their monastery, right? And are devoted, as you say, introspectively to their spiritual devotion, where friars, they more travel about looking to help people. They're more like Kung Fu, the legend continues.
Yeah.
Except without beating people up.
Yeah.
Oh, unless, well, most of the time.
Yeah.
I guess you have a story
I have a story
about Padre.
Yeah, we'll get to it later if there's time.
But yeah, he became quite famous for his life, and he was known for having a number of paranormal abilities that arose due to his just extreme spiritual devotion through his life. He was a sufferer of the Stigmata, which I'm sure everyone knows what that is through pop culture references, but also he was known to bilocate. He was known to be able to read people's souls. like kind of instantaneously know what was going on in their lives and know what their sins were and stuff like that. And he also battled with demons, literally and physically,
Yeah.
in some respects, by some accounts. So yeah, we're going to get into his fascinating character. I believe he was officially canonized by the Catholic Church in the early
2002.
2000s. Yeah, 2002. Yeah, and
Yeah, so he's now officially kind of known as Saint Pio of Pietrelcina,
yeah,
which Pietrelcina is where he was born. He was born in 1887. When he was 15, he joined the Capuchin order, which is it's kind of an offshoot of the Franciscan order,
yeah.
which was
They're more orthodox, right? They kind of
so
go back to the origins of the Franciscan.
Yeah, it's kind of like a purist offshoot of the Franciscan order, and they wear these pointed hoods called cappuccio, hence the name Capuchin order.
Yeah, which I guess is where we get the word cappuccino, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I had read that when I was doing research this week because of the color of the brown color of the robe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't connect those two.
Yeah.
But anyway, I should say he was born Francesco Forgione. But when you join this order, you've got to take on a new name. You know, it's like giving up your old life and starting your new life. And you choose this name, and when monks or friars choose their new name, it's often taken after some saint or religious figure or biblical figure that they really admire. So Francesco Forgione, he took the name Pio after Pope Pius I, who he really admired. Anyway, he took his final vows as a Capuchin friar in 1907. He was ordained a priest in 1910. And in 1916, he was assigned to the friary called Our Lady of Grace in San Giovanni Rotonda, which is a town in southern Italy. In 1918 is when...
That's when he first received his stigmata.
Yeah, he describes praying in his chapel. He describes feeling like some kind of light hit him, and he started feeling this intense pain in his hands and in his feet, and he started saying, Lord, please no, Lord, I'm not worthy, because he knew what this was.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the rest of his life, he was perpetually bleeding from both of his hands, both of his feet, and from his side.
On and off, I guess. Like there was, I guess, periods where it would abate and then it would kind of return. But also, not to jump ahead too far, but I think if I'm right, you can correct me if I've got this wrong. But if I'm right, upon his death, they like suddenly healed, like the wounds healed it up.
Well, actually, the stigmata continued for 50 years from 1918. They actually had to be rebandaged every day. He died in 1968, and just a few days prior to his death is when the stigmata stopped.
Right.
And all of his wounds
there we go.
healed.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. And I mean, I think it's worth noting, we're jumping around in time a bunch, but when I was reading up about his life, that he was very spiritually inclined from a very, very young age. Like from being a toddler, like his parents had noted how kind of pious and devout he was, and he wanted to spend all his time at church. Like he would hear the town church bells ringing, and he just wanted to go and be at church and be in the presence of God all day. And so it's not surprise, from a very young age. I also had read that he wanted to join the Capuchin order so badly because he thought their beards were cool. Because they don't shave their beards, so they let them grow really long and wild, and he thought it was awesome. He liked the uniform, He was like, that's what I want to do. That's the order for me. I thought that was kind of funny. So and I mean, he's not without controversy. I mean, he's been the subject of several investigations through his career of being a friar and eventually a priest.
Yeah, and a lot of
the Catholic Church doesn't look kindly upon kind of individuals that start gaining this kind of notoriety. And fame.
This started with his stigmata, because the Catholic Church, when this happens, there's only been 400 documented cases of stigmata in all of history.
Yeah.
The church considers stigmata to be a gift for, particularly holy individuals to share in the suffering of Christ.
Yeah.
You know, it's the marks that Christ received on the cross, the nails through the hands and the feet, and the gash in the side from being, lanced by a Roman soldier, by the spear of destiny, as it's called.
Yeah.
But when this happens, the church looks upon it very cautiously.
Yeah.
Because they'll immediately suspect fraud.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the church historically, they're very suspicious of people they consider to be, I guess you'd say, almost too holy.
Right.
People who become too popular.
Yeah.
It's a threat to their power structure almost.
And they don't want like an individual priest to start gaining such popularity and following that it becomes cult-like.
Cult of personality?
Yeah, but exactly what you're saying, cult of personality.
Yeah.
Where they don't want an individual's fame and popularity to override people's faith in Christ, so that you don't want to be worshiping that new individual more than you are God.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the concern.
Yeah.
I would say, depending how you look at it, right?
Yeah.
I guess you could look at it from the framework of it's a threat to the church's power.
Yeah.
But there was also other accusations that popped up over the years throughout his life of, not maybe living the Christian lifestyle in one form or another, but they all ended up being investigated thoroughly and absolved in one form or another. So it's probably just kind of the trappings of popularity and fame that eventually someone's going to talk smack about you.
Yeah.
But the church has to follow up and investigate and make sure
Yeah.
you're above board. But he always came through out the other side, kind of absolved of any of those accusations.
Yeah, none of them really stood up to scrutiny. But again, where it really started was the stigmata.
Yeah.
This something supernatural that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interestingly enough,
And that's what drew our interest, right?
Yeah.
Is the supernatural kind of abilities he seemed to endow.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, the first documented case of stigmata in history was Saint Francis of Assisi, who was the founder of the Franciscan order,
Right.
which the Capuchin order is like an offshoot of.
Right.
And just
So there's
like,
a direct connection to his faith practice and the stigmata he suffered.
Yeah, it was actually interesting because I went on this whole tangent in my research looking into St. Francis of Assisi, and he seems to have just this crazy parallel life with Padre Pio.
Right.
Both men were very much treated with fear and suspicion by the church of the time.
Yeah.
Both of them became kind of wildly popular with the public, and both had the ability to appear in two places at once.
Yeah,
I found that
bilocation.
Bilocation.
That's
Saint
one of the
Francis,
most interesting things.
Yeah, Saint Francis of Assisi, he was said to be able to appear to pray over sick people that were like on the other side of the continent from where he actually was.
Yeah.
And he would appear to lost sailors at sea, things like that. And the two just seem to share like they seem to have a lot in common in their personality.
Right.
Both men had what is described as a profound love of creation or nature. Actually, there's stories told of both men perpetually being followed around when they were outdoors by flocks of birds.
Right. Oh, cool.
Actually, there's a great story about Francis of Assisi, who he apparently actually tamed a wolf at one point.
Oh. That sounds interesting. Is there more to that story? Or
I don't know the rest of the story. It's just something I came across.
Okay, that's pretty cool though.
Yeah, both men faced suspicion by the church, but were ultimately, towards the end of their lives, absolved and embraced by the church. Just interesting parallel lives. Actually, if you look,
canonized.
Yeah, if you look at paintings of Saint Francis of Assisi, he actually looks just like Padre Pio. It's kind of eerie.
Almost like there could be a reincarnation thing. Although Catholics don't embrace reincarnation.
No, but what some Catholics will say is that, the life of Padre Pio was a continuation of the mission of Saint Francis of Assisi, is how they'll put it.
Cool. Yeah, it was initially the bilocation stuff, actually, more than the stigmata that drew me to talking about him as a character, and why kind of the name Padre Pio is stuck in my head, because I've heard those stories over the years, and probably if it's all right with you, we'll draw out probably the most famous and the most entertaining
Yeah.
story of bilocation for me, is because he was practicing during the Second World War, and we're in the south of Italy, right? And there's this great story of this American bomber pilot, and he's meant to bomb a target in Italy near his monastery, near the rotunda.
Yeah.
And as this American bomber pilot is approaching his target, all of a sudden in the sky, this image of Padre Pio appears. Or he doesn't know who he is, he just sees this friar all of a sudden floating outside the cockpit of his plane, putting his hand up like, no, you'll go no further. And all his bombing mechanisms, like the bombs wouldn't release, right?
Yeah.
He physically couldn't drop the bombs over this target.
Yeah, so this story actually was repeated by several bomber crews. This happened on more than one occasion.
Yeah,
and each time they were doing a bombing run near this town, because this was after the Italian armistice. So Italy is kind of a war zone. You know, southern Italy belongs to the Allies. Northern Italy is invaded by the Germans and is controlled by the Germans. And central Italy is kind of just this war zone.
Yeah.
Okay? San Giovanni Rotunda was kind of in the middle of this battle zone.
Yeah.
The reason, you know, the Allies might have wanted to bomb this area, there was a nearby military hospital. It was part of the German transport lines. There were suspected fuel caches there, and there were radio relay stations in the surrounding hills. So this was an area the Allies were very interested in bombing. But on each bombing run, it said that this friar would appear outside the plane, and their navigational instruments would start malfunctioning. The bomb bay doors would refuse to open, and they had to abort multiple bombing runs.
Yeah.
And
there was this, it became, like you say, kind of famous story of the flying friar.
Yeah.
Right? And it's very Luke Skywalker. I feel like Disney stole this particular device when he's fighting. You remember when he's fighting Kylo Ren? But really it's just his Force ghost or whatever.
They abort the bombing run, and then Padre Pio just says, "See you around, kid," and disappears. That's actually not what I thought of. I just have this image in my mind of Padre Pio floating in the sky in front of these planes with his arms out going, "You shall not pass!"
But anyway, that's a really fun story. Yeah. And that's why he sticks out as a fixture in my memory.
But this story, it was repeated by multiple air crews in the 464th Bomber Group, which was stationed at Foggia in southern Italy. Now, this whole area, all the bombing campaigns in this area were overseen by this general named Bernardo Rossini. Mm-hmm. And during the war, he would hear these reports of this apparition of this friar appearing and causing his crews to abort their bombing runs, and he became very annoyed by these stories that kept happening. And after the war, one of these airmen happened to be in the vicinity of San Giovanni Rotunda and actually saw Padre Pio
in person and recognized him.
Said, "That's the guy. That's the guy I saw outside my plane." And he goes back and he reports this to this General Rossini. And General Rossini, he's intrigued. Yeah. He doesn't believe it, but he's intrigued. He says, "I'm going to go interview this Padre Pio and get to the truth of this." Yeah. So he travels to San Giovanni Rotunda and he visits, this friary of Padre Pio's. And the story goes, when this general walks into the room with Padre Pio, he doesn't even say a word. Padre Pio looks up at him and immediately says, "So you're the man that wanted to bomb my children." Mm. And this general is just shocked. Yeah. He says, "How did you know?" And Padre Pio says, "There's no need to ask how I know. God allows me to care for my children." Mm. Yeah. And anyway, they have this hour-long conversation, which isn't super well documented. It was a private conversation. Yeah. Padre Pio basically says to him, "Your men were prevented because it was not God's will. God does not want any more suffering on this land." And the general asks him, "Was that really you in the sky?" Yeah. And Pio says, "When the Lord sends me, I go." Yeah. Anyway, this general apparently left a completely changed man, a true believer. Yeah. And he actually became friends with Padre Pio for the rest of his life, would often travel to see him to seek spiritual guidance.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I didn't know that aspect of it. But yeah, that becomes the theme as we kind of will unpack these individual, seemingly paranormal abilities that Padre Pio had. Is he's very humble about it and very much doesn't take credit for it ever. He's just like, it's not me doing these things. It's God enabling me to do these things so that I can do my work.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it is worth noting that he suffered chronic illness throughout his entire life. The story of his life and health is very much one of suffering and perpetual illness.
Yeah, he actually tried to join the Italian military during World War I, working as a medic, but he was just discharged because he was in such poor health.
Yeah. And one of the other... So I read this book this week. I really skimmed through it. It's called Pray, Hope, and Don't Worry, True Stories of Padre Pio, Book 1. I believe it's a series of books. Most of it is just... Each chapter is just this person's encounter with Padre Pio and the impact it had on their lives. And then this other person and this other person. But there's like a whole chapter devoted to his scent. I guess the guy just smelled great all the time. And it was made note of throughout his entire life that just wherever he went, there was this very pleasant aroma that was all his own. And even people report this of pictures of him. Like if someone carried a picture around with them, all of a sudden they'd find that this very pleasant aroma just followed them around.
I should try that.
Yeah. and I mean, I was trying to nail this down, see if I could find a really good description of what exactly this smell was, right? Like, what did it smell like that was so good? And that took some work. And there's a whole chapter devoted to this in book. It's often described as the aroma of paradise, pleasant but difficult to describe. And so people would find this in the confession when they'd be in confession with Padre Pio. And Padre Pio had this ability, I guess, of just as soon as someone entered the confession booth with him and sat down, he would just know everything about them without them having to say a word. Mm-hmm. And he would know what their sins were and what they were not confessing to, right? And he would actually get irate and upset, and he would throw people out of confession even if they were not getting to the sins that he knew they were holding back.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I've some stories about that.
But just sticking with the scent a little bit. So I've got there's a couple really good stories here I want to pull out. There's this one of this engineer. And this is one where the engineer had went to confession, and he was not living a very pious life, but he went to confession every week and confessed, right? And at some point, I don't know if it was Pio himself or someone else in the order had given him a picture of Padre Pio to carry around. And this engineer reported a few days later, the engineer noticed an odor which surrounded him and followed him wherever he went. It had an unpleasant smell of something that was burning. He's quoted as saying, "I cannot understand what this odor is." The engineer said to himself, "I don't know what to make of it." Suddenly a voice spoke to him from within his heart and said, "It's this extremely bad life you're living." And hence the smell of burning was a warning, right?
Yeah.
And it freaked him out, and it caused him to, I guess, make some changes in his lifestyle. And the smell went away eventually. But I've got another one. Okay, here, I want to pull this up. So this is the best description I found of the way people have described or labeled this scent. Roses, lilies, violets, carnations, pine, cologne, incense, camphor, honeysuckle, lavender, carbolic acid, fine oriental tobacco, medicine sulfur, orange blossoms, and other sweet-smelling flowers, cinnamon, vanilla, licorice, eucalyptus, phenyl acid, more. And it would often come in waves or wafts, intermittent bursts of fragrance. And so it's thought also as well that people would say the scent would pop up if they prayed to Padre Pio, right? If they, were praying for someone's illness and they invoked kind of Padre Pio's name, they would just suddenly get this scent, right? And that's pretty broad, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like it was different for different people.
Yeah, but that kind of floral smell. Padre Pio isn't alone in that. That's kind of like a commonly reported side effect of stigmata. You know, when people get the stigmata, they have these gashes in their hands and their feet and their side that are constantly bleeding.
Yeah.
When they're examined, doctors who examine these, they can never find a medical explanation for it. The wounds never get infected.
Yeah.
And they always smell of flowers.
Yeah.
They have
Which
a
is
floral
very
smell to them.
counterintuitive. Like an open wound, especially one that's perpetually open,
Yeah.
wouldn't smell nice. That's not a nice smell.
It's gonna get infected.
Yeah. If anything, it should be the opposite. But I have my own little anecdote I'd like to tell about this. Because, I was immersed in this research this week. And Xena had a really bad bout of upset stomach, our dog, earlier this week. And there was one night where she was keeping me up. She kept waking me up, needing to go out. And it was so bad, I could tell, like, her diarrhea was so bad. When she was going in the yard, she was even kind of wincing a bit when she was going to the bathroom, right? It's just awful, It really sucks when your dog is suffering. And it's in the middle of the night, and I was starting to get really worried that something was really wrong, right?
Yeah.
So, we had just been out in the yard, and we came back in. We're trying to go back to sleep. And I just thought, well, what the hell? There's no harm. I'm going to say just a quiet prayer to myself, just in my head, not aloud, and I made a little prayer to Padre Pio and said, please look after my dog. I hope everything's all right. I don't want her to be sick, right? I don't want her to be suffering this way.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, it's like there was a gentle spring breeze that filled the bedroom. And it's like it was very gentle, but it felt like spring, that air, the way the air feels in spring.
Yeah.
When stuff starts blooming and like the lilac trees, you walk by a lilac tree in the spring when they're just blooming and there's that amazing smell. It was just like that. And it was just in my bedroom all of a sudden.
Well,
it was wild.
If you're going to make an appeal to Padre Pio on behalf of an animal, he's probably going to answer. The man was a lover of animals.
Yeah, that's right. So what do you think about that?
I don't know what I think about that. I was kind of jokingly telling you something.
And Xena was fine the next day, though.
Yeah.
Which, she could have been either way. Dogs get diarrhea. It happens. She scrounges around all kinds of stuff.
But I was kind of jokingly telling you a story before we started the show, and I was telling you, like, on my way over to your house to record the show, I was damn near run over by a car.
Yeah, that's right.
On the walk over here.
Yeah.
And this is not the first time this has happened to me over walking through Crowfoot.
Yeah.
People are just idiot drivers, I was going through a crosswalk. I had the light. There was a car trying to make a left turn. He was too busy watching for his gap in traffic. He wasn't watching the crosstalk, and he just careens towards me.
Yeah.
But I saw him, happened to see him, and I had enough presence of mind to just dive out of the way. The guy didn't even slow down.
No.
But I had the presence of mind in that moment to just dive out of the way.
I thought you were going to say Padre Pio appeared and pushed you out of the crosswalk.
No, but I was kind of jokingly telling you, I've been kind of engrossed in this man's life all week. I'm a fan. I don't pray to him, but I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
And I was saying maybe Saint Pio was looking out for me in that moment.
Yeah. And I'm not religious. I'm sure as hell not Catholic or Christian. No offense to anyone who is. I have no problem with whatever belief system anybody has. But, I don't subscribe to any specific faith whatsoever. But I have to say, researching this guy this week was inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely a man who he suffered a lot.
Yeah.
He was, again, persecuted very much by the Catholic Church of the time, especially during the 1920s and 30s. This is often known as, this period is called Pio's silent suffering. From 1923 to 1933, the Catholic Church had investigated his stigmata. They couldn't explain it, but they were afraid. They were afraid either it's a fraud, which is going to disenfranchise people, or this man is going to become too influential.
Yeah.
So what did they do? They quietly tucked him away. Padre Pio was banned from holding public mass. He was banned from hearing confessions. He was banned from visitors. His letters were intercepted and read.
Yeah.
Basically, he couldn't be a friar anymore.
Yeah.
This hurt him a great deal. Obviously, it did. But he just obeyed. He endured.
Yeah.
Quietly and many say gladly.
Yeah.
He was interviewed in his later years, and he was asked, what did you do during that time? And he said, I read, I prayed, I played pranks on my brothers. Apparently, he was a big fan of practical jokes.
Yeah.
In his friary.
Jovial fellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this, even when some of these things were lifted in the 40s and 50s, the church was still very suspicious of him. Mm-hmm. They actually bugged his confessional booth and recorded his confessions.
Yeah, yeah.
His phone was wiretapped.
Yeah.
Rumors were spread of all kinds of impropriety by him. None of them
held
up to scrutiny.
Yeah.
But still,
and like you said, and I don't want to make unfounded accusations, but it's almost like, they just were annoyed with how popular he was, because his followers were very devout. And really, through these periods of time, it's almost like it made it worse. The more restrictions the Catholic Church put upon him, the more public outrage there were from, his flock of saying, we want our priest back. We want to go to mass with our priest, because he was just that beloved.
Yeah, at one point, the higher-ups in the Catholic Church, they even threatened to relocate him from San Giovanni, and there was this huge public outcry, and these huge protests were held, and the church had to back off because he was so popular.
And it's like, how often do you hear of kind of these accusations coming up about a priest in the Catholic faith that don't end up being true? That they actually get absolved and are absolved of wrongdoing. I feel like that's a rare phenomenon in today's world anyway. You much hear the inverted story.
Yeah.
Right? But, it's interesting. And maybe I'm wrong. I apologize if this is a wrong perception, but it's a perception I have, that it's kind of a cornerstone of the Catholic faith that suffering is good.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm unsure about how I feel about that.
I mean, that's why Stigmata is considered a gift. To
because
share in the
you get to
suffering
share
of
in the suffering of Christ, right? And he would even say he'd be in church performing a mass, and as he was speaking to the crowd, he could feel the thorns digging into his head.
Yeah.
As he was, as he got kind of carried away in the delivery of sermon, kind of thing. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure how I feel about that idea that, I guess I get it. Suffering is good for the soul. The more you're meant to endure, the more it tests your faith. I guess I'm just of two minds about that.
Well, I believe the Catholic view on it is, Christ suffered for the debt of sin is suffering.
Yeah.
And Christ suffered to, kind of pay back the debt of humanity.
Right. So
or
a
large
almost like
chunk of it.
So it's almost like the concept of karma, where the more you suffer, the more kind of spiritual credit you accumulate.
Yeah.
If you could look at it that way.
But
I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding the whole thing. Like I
but
said, I'm not religious.
The Catholic view of it would be that I don't necessarily share your kind of that comparison to like you're gaining more karma. I think that from what I've heard, the Catholic view of it is that suffering brings you closer to Christ.
Right.
You are living a more Christ-like life through suffering, which brings you closer to God.
Right. Well, and from there, the danger of that is it's said that the closer you get to God, the more the enemy gains your attention or will become aware of you. So the more pure you become, the more you suffer, the more the devil is interested in you and will begin to attack you and test you. And this is another theme throughout Padre Pio's life, that he was constantly under attack by demons, and that he himself, I guess he wasn't directly involved in exorcism formally with the Catholic Church, but he seemed to have an ability. And I guess people that thought they were possessed would seek him out, and he had the ability just to be like, "Be gone!"
Yeah.
And kind of instantaneously exorcise demons from people.
He's said to have an ability to command demons.
Yeah.
What's often said is this man was so holy that demons would shrink at the mere sight of him.
Yeah.
And most of these, in quotes, exorcisms happened through his confession booth.
Yeah.
You know, people would come to him, or people would be brought to him that were believed to be possessed by demons.
Yeah.
And there was no ceremony involved in any of these exorcisms conducted by Padre Pio. You know, you think of an exorcism, it's a lot of ceremony.
Well, and there is, a formal course for demon exorcism within the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. He was not part of that formal structure. Yeah. But he just seemed to have this ability.
Yeah. Like, I'll give you an example of how this would typically go. This is an actual example. This woman who was believed to be possessed by multiple demons. This was believed by her family because she was ranting and raving and speaking in tongues and the whole thing,
Yeah.
So she's brought before Padre Pio, and when she's brought before Padre Pio, she immediately screams and says, "I can't stay here. He burns me."
Right.
And then Padre Pio just pointed at her and said, "Kneel." And she immediately collapsed.
Right.
And Padre Pio just started quietly praying over her, and she got up. She was completely fine.
Right.
The demon was gone.
Yeah.
Multiple stories like this where, people were supposedly possessed, and Padre Pio would just, even with just a look or a glance or a simple command, would send demons fleeing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's also the stories of miraculous healings as well, from people would seek him out that suffered from their own chronic illness. I found one story of a woman who was blind her entire life, who regained her sight after a visit of Padre Pio. And maybe that's why the church was so suspicious of him, because that does, not in just the Catholic faith, but in many faiths, you do have these characters that pop up with these supposed miraculous abilities. It does gain this kind of cult-like following. I can see why you would look at it suspiciously.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's been lots of gurus and supposed holy men like that seem to command these abilities through history that end up just being huge creepers or something, Mm-hmm. And kind of the light of truth shows their true character, right? So in that respect, I can't blame the Catholic Church for being suspicious of someone who supposedly has these abilities. Mm-hmm. But in his case, it seems like they were genuine, Yeah. And I mean, we can kind of parse that apart in what we think about that. Like, do you think that's just people's religious fervor and kind of enthusiasm and an ecstatic kind of belief in him that they start these things kind of psychosomatically happen to people, and that's where these stories come from? Or do you think it's genuine? What do you think?
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, and we've talked before about the power of belief and faith, and how even in when we talked about the Philip experiment, right?
Yeah. Just
the power of ritual and belief can create the right kind of psychic circumstances for these things to come into being. What the mechanism behind the phenomenon is, who can say? Maybe it's real spiritual power.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's something in between. I don't know. But anyway, sorry, a little tangent there.
Yeah. But Padre Pio, very much, he was a man fighting a spiritual war almost. Yeah. Because he could see the demons. The demons could also see him. He was supposedly attacked by demons nightly.
Yeah, that's right.
His brothers in the friary would often hear, strange sounds coming from his cell, crashing and thudding. They'd go and check on Padre Pio, and he was beaten up. He was bruised. He was battered. He'd have dislocated joints, broken bones, and he said he was being nightly attacked by demons. He said, "The devils are trying to frighten me away from confession, but I won't be frightened away."
Interesting.
And actually, sometimes demons would even, he says sometimes demons would appear at his confessional to mock him. There's this story of a man possessed by a demon who shows up to Padre Pio's confession and starts just really mockingly, really theatrically making these absurd confessions about like absolutely vile things, the worst things you could imagine. And Pio says, "Stop. You are not a man." And the man says, "No one has recognized me before you." And then Pio basically just says, "Begone!" and the man collapses and starts weeping uncontrollably.
Yeah.
And the demon's gone.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, and I think it's great that towards the end of his life, like he was absolved of, like there was investigations, he was absolved of any wrongdoing, and I think it was what's the Pope?
Pope Paul VI.
Yeah.
Everything kind of changed with him.
Because he was a fan of Padre Pio, and he kind of absolved him of any kind of suspicion of wrongdoing and all the restrictions that it put on him.
Yeah.
And I believe it was him who finally canonized him after his death. Is that correct?
No, it was Pope Paul VI in the 60s.
Right.
Because up until the 60s, Padre Pio, he was very much suppressed by the church. But Pope Paul VI comes into power and he says, "Look what glory he has brought to the church. What good he has done. Casa Solevo was built through his faith." He's referring there to a church that Padre Pio had built, which is actually quite impressive. I believe that's considered to be one of the miracles he performed, was the building of this church called Casa Solevo della Sofferenza, and that means Home for the Relief of Suffering. This actually started in 1925. During, these long years where Padre Pio was very much silenced and suppressed by the church, he describes during prayer hearing Christ telling him to build this church, not this church, this hospital. And he's saying, Christ told him, supposedly, "Treat the sick as you would treat me." So Padre Pio organizes this. It starts with just like these donated buildings. It's like this ruined, abandoned, it was, what was it? It was this ruined, rundown monastery.
Yeah.
It was just a few buildings. And Padre Pio converts it into a clinic. And it's small, and it's understaffed, and it's overcrowded, and it's underfunded. But over the years, he miraculously gathers all these donations, and he did this all from within his friary, which he wasn't allowed to leave.
Yeah.
He organizes all of this. Expansion after expansion happens at the hospital as we know it today. The hospital still stands to this day, is one of the top hospitals in Europe.
Wow.
Actually.
Huh.
It's one of Europe's best hospitals. It's a major research institute. It's a center for cancer treatment. It's a leader in neurology and cardiology. And it's internationally respected. It's considered the fulfillment of Padre Pio's mission.
Huh.
And even to this day, people who go to this hospital, they describe miraculous healings, impossible recoveries, and just an overall sense of peace on the grounds of this hospital.
Does it smell great as well in there?
Probably. And they have like prayer rooms in the hospital.
Yeah.
And in these prayer rooms, people report still feeling the presence of Padre Pio while they're praying. Padre Pio is quoted as saying, "This place will be a lighthouse of love for the world."
Really cool. Well, I feel like if I was sick, that's probably where I would want to go if I was in southern Italy.
Yeah.
But yeah, a really interesting story of this dude. Do we have anything else we want to say? We're probably getting around to the time to wrap up.
There's one anecdote about him that I just have to throw in.
Great.
Because,
Let's have it.
I've listened to I've read a lot and I've listened to a lot on this guy, and from what we've said so far, he seems quite saintly.
Yeah.
But people describe him, he's also kind of a guy's guy,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
How so?
And you know what? One part of your description of his scent kind of makes sense. Tobacco. Because the man enjoyed very few pleasures in life, but he loved a good cigar, apparently. Occasionally, he loved a good cigar. He was definitely a person who did not mince words and didn't pull his punches.
Yeah.
I have a great story. This happened in the 60s. I don't have the name of this woman. In the 60s, he was fully reconciled with the church. He could give mass. He can conduct mass freely. He could take confessions freely. He was wildly popular. But, he was getting quite elderly and definitely, obviously, approaching the end of his life. Apparently this one woman, he was at a public event, this one woman ran up to him, and she really wanted a relic of this man who would probably one day be made a saint.
Right.
So she ran up to him, and she grabbed his beard and plucked a bunch of hair out of his beard. And apparently Padre Pio just turned and punched her in the face.
Just clocked her.
He just clocked
knocked her out. Well,
said, you grabbed hairs out of my face. Clearly you needed to be smacked.
Yeah. Be gone, demon. No. Well, it sounds like she deserved it. I mean, honestly, some stranger just ran up and like tugging at my beard. I'd probably turn around and clock him as well.
And that's very much like how he was. There's like you had mentioned. Well, you had mentioned before, he would sometimes throw people out of confessions.
Yeah,
if they weren't serious about it, he could tell. He could tell. He had a way of looking inside people. If people weren't serious about their confession, he would say, "Get out, you dog."
Yeah.
Get out before I throw you out. He would scream at the top of his lungs at these people.
Well, he's Italian, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing to remember about, historical figures like this, is they're still human beings. Even holy men are human beings, right? And are, despite whatever mystical or spiritual qualities we might want to espouse to them, they're still human beings at the end of the day, navigating life like the rest of us. And they're going to have their moments. And Italians have a reputation for being very open with their emotional swings and fluctuations. Don't want to offend anybody, but am I wrong?
No comment.
But anyway, I guess we should wrap it up. I'm really happy with this episode. This is a lot of fun. Another one that feels like just light and easy, like last week's. I feel like there's a good vibe going on. I think it's just we're getting a little relaxed because we're in the last few episodes of the season. I think our last episode for the season, when did we decide it was going to be, like December 10th or December 17th, something like that. I can't remember, but
something like that.
There's only a handful left. I got nothing done on my short this week. Work has been too busy. I don't expect I'll get anything done next week because work is going to be crazy next week as well. But hopefully we'll have some little bonus material to drop over the Christmas break. But we are going to be taking a break. From whenever our last episode in December is, probably mid-December to January 10th or something like that. We'll be back for season 3.
But I've got some things cooking that we can release during the break.
Great.
So
Great. Yeah.
We won't be without content for those weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, maybe not weekly like we have been, like the regular season, but I'm looking forward to a break. I'm looking forward to the opportunity for us to kind of take a step back, refresh, and kind of have a clean slate for going into a new season. We've got new stuff we want to explore and ideas in which we're going to try and take the podcast and our brand up to a new level, as we're constantly working on. If you've followed the show, we've come a long way in just the space of a year. So I think good stuff coming ahead. But we'll leave it there. I hope everyone's having a great weekend and enjoy this episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.